"Marry me now, human. You saved me." The words hung in the air of Matthew Reed's cramped spacecraft, uttered by the trembling, waddy female he'd just rescued from slavery. Matthew's mind raced, trying to process the events of the last hour. What had started as a routine maintenance stop on an alien space station had spiraled into a diplomatic nightmare. He'd stumbled upon a secret waddy slave market, hidden in the bowels of the station. The sight of Oren, a female waddy, being beaten by her overseer for attempting escape, had ignited something primal in him. Without thinking, Matthew had intervened. His human strength, honed by years of work as a spaceship engineer, proved superior to the waddy overseers. In a blur of action, he'd overpowered the alien, freed Oren, and fled through a maze of maintenance tunnels. The sound of pursuing waddy security forces still echoed in his ears. Now, safely in hyperspace, Matthew faced a new challenge. Oren's proposal wasn't just gratitude, it was a cultural imperative. By freeing her, he'd unknowingly triggered a waddy law that obligated any non-waddy rescuer to take responsibility for freed slaves. Marriage was the traditional method. The realization hit him like a meteor impact. He was now a criminal in waddy space, cut off from his job and human society. The incident was rapidly escalating into a diplomatic crisis between humanity and the waddy empire. Matthew's comm unit crackled to life. A stern voice from Human Central Command filled the cabin. "Reed, do you realize what you've done? The waddy are demanding your extradition. They want you to face their justice system." His throat tightened. The human authorities, wary of conflict with the technologically superior waddy, were considering handing him over. But then the voice lowered, taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Listen carefully, Reed. We're officially denouncing your actions, but unofficially, we have a proposition. We need someone on the inside, someone who can gather intelligence on waddy technology and weaknesses. You're our way in." Matthew glanced at Oren, her alien features a mix of fear and hope. He felt a surprising surge of protectiveness. "What exactly are you asking?" "Accept the girl's proposal. Infiltrate waddy society. Gather intel. It's dangerous, but it's our best shot at preparing for a potential conflict. Failure could mean war." The weight of the mission settled on Matthew's shoulders. He was just an engineer, thrust into a world of espionage and interstellar politics. Yet as he looked at Oren, he knew he couldn't abandon her. And if his actions could prevent a war— "I'll do it," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. As he ended the transmission, Oren's eyes met his. In that moment, Matthew realized his life would never be the same. He was no longer just Matthew Reed, spaceship engineer. He was now a reluctant spy, a cultural bridge, and, if waddy custom held, a soon-to-be husband. The stars streaked by outside the viewport, carrying them deeper into waddy space and an uncertain future. Matthew took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. He'd saved Oren on impulse, driven by human ideals of freedom and compassion. Now, those same ideals might just save humanity. The hyperspace journey to Novotera stretched on for days, each passing hour heightening Matthew's anxiety. Oren sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, her large almond-shaped eyes fixed on the swirling vortex outside the viewscreen. The silence between them was thick with unspoken questions and fears. As they dropped out of hyperspace, Novotera loomed before them, a bustling frontier world on the edge of known space. The planet's surface was a patchwork of urban sprawl and untamed wilderness, dotted with the lights of 1,000 different species dwellings. Matthew's hands flew over the controls, guiding their battered craft towards a nondescript landing pad on the outskirts of the main settlement. As they touched down, he let out a long-held breath. "We made it." Oren's antennae twitched nervously. "What now, Matthew?" He pulled out a battered communicator, fingers hesitating over the keys. "Now we call in a favor from an old friend." The connection crackled to life, and a gruff voice filled the cabin. "Hawkins Repairs, what's the emergency?" "Jack, it's Matt Reed. I'm in trouble and I need your help." There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "Damn it, Matt! What have you gotten yourself into this time?" 20 minutes later, Matthew and Oren were hurrying through Novotera's winding streets, following Jack's directions to his repair shop. The colony was a riot of sights, sounds, and smells, a melting pot of cultures from across the galaxy. Oren pressed close to Matthew, overwhelmed by the sensory assault. They arrived at a ramshackle building, its walls covered in a patchwork of mismatched metal panels. Jack Hawkins, a bear of a man with grease-stained hands and a wild beard, ushered them inside quickly. "You two are hotter than a plasma injector right now," Jack growled, leading them to a hidden room behind his main workshop. "The whole damn galaxy's looking for you." Matthew collapsed onto a worn couch, the weight of their situation finally hitting him. "Jack, I can't thank you enough for this." Jack waved him off. "Save it. Just tell me what the hell is going on." As Matthew recounted their story, Oren explored the room with wide-eyed curiosity. She ran her fingers over tools and machine parts, marveling at the human technology. "So you're a married man now," Jack chuckled, shaking his head, "and an interstellar fugitive to boot. You sure know how to complicate things, Matt." Over the next few weeks, Matthew and Oren settled into a routine. During the day, they stayed hidden in the back room, with Matthew teaching Oren about human culture and technology. Her quick mind and natural curiosity made her an apt pupil. "This is fascinating," Oren said one afternoon, poring over an old engineering manual. "Your species has achieved so much with such limited resources." Matthew smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with pride in human accomplishments. He was beginning to see Oren in a new light, not just as someone he needed to protect, but as a partner, an equal. In return, Oren shared insights into Wadi society and technology. Her descriptions of Wadi propulsion systems left Matthew's head spinning with possibilities. As they worked and learned together, their relationship deepened. What had started as an arrangement of necessity was blossoming into something real, something neither of them had expected. One night, as they sat together watching the twin moons of Novotera rise, Matthew's comm unit buzzed. The encrypted message from UN Security Council Chairman Marcus Stone was brief but urgent. "Intel on Wadi weaknesses critical. Time running out. Proceed with caution." Matthew's stomach churned. He glanced at Oren, peacefully stargazing, and felt a pang of guilt. How could he betray her trust? The next day, Matthew approached Jack with a proposal. "I need to modify some of your diagnostic equipment. It's sensitive work." Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. "Whatever you're up to, be careful. This colony's got eyes and ears everywhere." With Jack's equipment and Oren's reluctant assistance, Matthew began his covert analysis of Wadi technology. Progress was slow and fraught with setbacks, but gradually, patterns emerged. "Look at this," Matthew said one evening, pointing to a complex series of equations on his datapad. "If I'm right, there's a vulnerability in the Wadi shield modulation." Oren leaned in, her expression a mix of awe and concern. "Matthew, this could be used against my people." He took her hand, meeting her gaze. "I'm trying to prevent a war, not start one. Trust me." Before Oren could respond, an alarm blared from Jack's security system. "We've got company," Jack's voice boomed from the workshop. "Armed men, heading this way." Matthew's heart raced as he grabbed their essential gear. "We've got to go, now!" They burst into the main workshop just as the door exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris, Matthew glimpsed a motley crew of aliens led by a figure he recognized from wanted posters around the colony, Zax Vorn, Novotera's most notorious crime lord. "Jack, get down!" Matthew yelled, pulling Oren behind a heavy workbench as blaster fire erupted around them. In the chaos that followed, Matthew, Oren, and Jack fought their way to the back of the shop. Jack smacked his head on a hidden panel, revealing a secret exit. "Go!" Jack shouted, tossing Matthew a set of keys. "There's a shuttle in Bay 7. It's not much, but it'll fly." Matthew hesitated, unwilling to leave his friend behind. Jack shoved him towards the exit. "I'll hold them off! Now go, you idiots!" With a final nod of gratitude, Matthew and Oren sprinted through the exit and into the night. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them as they raced through Novotera's twisting alleys. They reached the spaceport, alarms blaring all around them. Matthew spotted the battered shuttle Jack had mentioned and practically threw Orrin inside. As he fired up the engines, colony security forces converged on their position. The shuttle lurched into the air, barely clearing the bay doors as blaster fire peppered its hull. They broke atmosphere in a series of stomach-churning maneuvers, the shuttle groaning in protest. But as the adrenaline of their escape faded, a new problem became apparent. "Matthew," Orrin said, her voice tight with worry, "the navigation system isn't working." He stared at the malfunctioning console, a cold dread settling over him. They were alive but lost in the vastness of space, with limited life support and no way to contact Earth. As Novotera receded behind them, Matthew realized their true journey was only beginning. Somewhere out there, a Wadi warship was heading for Earth, carrying an ultimatum that could spark an interstellar war. And here they were, adrift in space, holding the key to humanity's survival, but no way to deliver it. Matthew looked at Orrin, seeing his own fear and drive mirrored in her alien eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The vastness of space stretched out before them, full of danger and possibility. Matthew's eyes darted between the malfunctioning navigation console and the rapidly dwindling life support readouts. The silence of space pressed in around them, broken only by the labored wheezing of the shuttle's overtaxed systems. "We need to find a solution fast," he muttered, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. Orrin nodded, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Perhaps there's something useful in the cargo hold? This shuttle must have some sort of emergency protocols." With renewed purpose, they began a frantic search of the small craft. Matthew pried open access panels while Orrin rummaged through storage compartments. Minutes ticked by, each one bringing them closer to a lonely death in the void. "Matthew!" Orrin's voice rang out, tinged with excitement and trepidation. "I've found something!" He rushed to her side, heart pounding. In her hands, she held a sleek, cylindrical device adorned with familiar Wadi markings. "An emergency beacon," Matthew breathed, recognition dawning. "But it's Wadi technology." Their eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them. Activating the beacon could save their lives, but it might also lead their pursuers right to them. Matthew's mind raced, weighing their options. Suddenly, an idea sparked. "Wait," he said, reaching for the beacon. "I might be able to modify this." With deft hands honed by years of engineering work, Matthew began to disassemble the device. Orrin watched in fascination as he rewired circuits and reprogrammed transmitters. "What exactly are you doing?" she asked, leaning in close. Matthew's brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm reconfiguring it to broadcast on human emergency frequencies. If I can mask its Wadi origin, we might be able to call for help without alerting your people." Hours passed as Matthew worked, the shuttle's interior growing colder and the air thinner. Finally, with trembling fingers, he reconnected the last component. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, activating the beacon. The device hummed to life, emitting a steady pulse of energy into the vastness of space. Matthew and Orrin huddled together, watching the stars and hoping for a miracle. Days later, aboard the USS Horizon, Communications Officer Zara Patel jolted upright in her chair. "Commander Reeves," she called out, "I'm picking up a distress signal." Commander Victor Reeves strode to her station, his weathered face creased with concern. "Source?" "It appears to be a human frequency, sir," Patel replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "But there's something odd about it. I can't quite place it." Reeves studied the readouts, his instincts honed by years in deep space, screaming that something was amiss. After a moment's hesitation, he made his decision. "Helm, alter course to investigate. Tactical, bring weapons to standby. Let's hope this isn't a trap." As the Horizon changed direction, Matthew and Orrin's shuttle drifted lifelessly through space. Inside, the pair clung to consciousness, their breath forming frosty clouds in the frigid air. Matthew's eyes fluttered open as a brilliant light flooded the cockpit. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating. But as his vision cleared, he saw the unmistakable silhouette of a human vessel. "Orrin," he croaked, shaking her gently, "wake up, someone's here." They watched in awe as the massive ship drew closer, its tractor beam enveloping their tiny craft. As they were pulled into the docking bay, Matthew squeezed Oren's hand. "Remember the story," he whispered. "We're independent traders, nothing more." The shuttle's hatch hissed open, and they were greeted by a team in environmental suits. Strong hands helped them out, supporting their weakened bodies. "I'm Commander Reeves," a stern voice announced through a helmet speaker. "Welcome aboard the USS Horizon. Who are you, and what happened to your ship?" Matthew mustered his strength, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Matthew Reed, sir. This is my partner, Oren. We're independent traders. Our ship, we ran into some trouble with the drive core. Barely made it out alive." Reeves nodded, but his posture remained tense. "I see. Well, Mr. Reed, you and your partner will need to be quarantined until our medical team clears you. Standard procedure, you understand." As they were led to the medical bay, Matthew caught glimpses of the Horizon's crew. Some looked on with curiosity, others with suspicion. He could only hope their hastily concocted story would hold up under scrutiny. In the sterile confines of the medical bay, Dr. Elena Chen began her examination. Her eyes widened as she ran a scanner over Oren's body. "Commander," she called out, her voice tight, "you need to see this." Reeves entered, his gaze sharp. "What is it, Doctor?" Chen gestured to her readings. "Sir, she's not human. Her internal physiology is completely alien to anything in our database." The room fell silent. Matthew's heart raced as he realized their deception was unraveling. Oren trembled beside him, her large eyes darting between the humans. Reeves turned to Matthew, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "I think it's time you told us the truth, Mr. Reed. Who are you really, and what are you doing out here?" Matthew took a deep breath, knowing he had to tread carefully. "Commander, what I'm about to tell you is sensitive information. We're seeking asylum from the Wadi Empire. Oren was a slave. I helped her escape." The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Reeves's face hardened. "Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic nightmare you've just dropped in my lap, Reed?" Before Matthew could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Bridge to Commander Reeves. Sir, we're receiving an urgent transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Blackwood of the United Earth Space Command." Reeves' eyes never left Matthew, as he replied, "Patch it through to my personal comm. I'll take it in my ready room." He pointed at Matthew and Oren. "You two aren't going anywhere until I sort this out." As Reeves left, Matthew and Oren exchanged worried glances. Their fate now rested in the hands of forces beyond their control. In his ready room, Reeves activated his secure comlink. Admiral Sarah Blackwood's stern face filled the screen. "Commander," she began without preamble, "I understand you've picked up some interesting passengers." Reeves' eyebrows shot up. "You know about them already, Admiral?" Blackwood's expression remained impassive. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level, Commander. Those two are part of a covert operation. Your orders are to protect them at all costs while maintaining plausible deniability. Is that clear?" "Yes, Admiral," Reeves replied, his legs shaking. "But what about—" "All your questions will be answered in due time, Commander." Blackwood cut him off. "For now, focus on getting them safely to Earth. Blackwood out." As the transmission ended, Reeves leaned back in his chair, the weight of this new responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. Whatever game was being played here, it was clear the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, deep in Wadi space, General Thrax stood on the bridge of his warship, his scaled fingers drumming impatiently on the command console. A junior officer approached, bowing low. "General, we've detected an anomaly. A human vessel has suddenly altered course in Sector 7. Thrax's eyes narrowed. "Show me." As he studied the trajectory, a predatory grin spread across his face. "So the human thinks he can escape us. How delightfully naive." He turned to his crew, his voice booming across the bridge. "Set an intercept course. Push our engines to their limits. It's time we reminded the humans of their place in the galaxy." The Wadi warship surged forward, its advanced propulsion systems glowing with almost unchecked power. As they hurtled through space, Thrax's mind filled with visions of glory and conquest. The hunt was on, and he had no intention of returning empty-handed. The tension aboard the USS Horizon was palpable as Matthew and Oren were escorted to a secure conference room. Commander Reeves entered, his face a mask of stern professionalism. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Oren," he began, "I've just received orders from the highest levels of Earth's government. Your presence here is part of a classified operation, and I've been instructed to ensure your safety." He paused, studying their reactions. "Now, I need you to tell me everything." Matthew took a deep breath, exchanging a glance with Oren. He recounted their harrowing escape from Novotera, the critical information they carried about the Wadi ultimatum, and their desperate flight through space. As Matthew spoke, alarms blared throughout the ship. Reeves's comm unit crackled to life. "Commander!" It was the tactical officer, her voice tight with urgency. "We've detected a Wadi warship on an intercept course. They're pushing their engines hard, sir. ETA 15 minutes. Reeves' eyes sharp. "Understood. Sound general quarters. I'm on my way." He turned to Matthew and Oren. "Looks like your pursuers caught up. Come with me to the bridge. We might need your expertise." They hurried through the corridors, crew members rushing to battle stations around them. On the bridge, a holographic display showed the rapidly approaching Wadi vessel. "Options?" Reeves barked. The tactical officer shook her head. "Their ship outclasses us in every way, sir. Our shields won't hold against their weaponry." Matthew stepped forward, an idea forming. "Commander, I may have a solution. I've studied Wadi shield technology. If you'll allow me, I think I can modify our systems to create a hybrid defense." Reeves hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Do it. Chief Engineer O'Brien, assist Mr. Reed. You have 10 minutes. Matthew and O'Brien raced to the engineering deck. With Oren translating Wadi technical terms, they worked feverishly, rerouting power conduits and rewriting shield algorithms. "It's not pretty," Matthew said, wiping sweat from his brow, "but it should hold." They returned to the bridge just as the Wadi warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Its sleek, predatory form filled the view screen. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. The screen flickered, revealing the scaled visage of General Thrak. His reptilian eyes gleamed with triumph. "Human vessel, this is General Thrak of the Wadi Empire. You are harboring fugitives. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." Reeves stood tall, his voice steady. "This is Commander Victor Reeves of the USS Horizon. We will not comply with your demands. These individuals are under our protection." Thrak's expression darkened. "So be it." The transmission cut off. "Brace for impact!" Reeves shouted as the Wadi ship opened fire. Brilliant energy beams lanced toward the horizon. Matthew held his breath, watching the shield readouts. The hybrid defense flared to life, a shimmering barrier of combined human and Wadi technology. The Wadi weapons splashed against it, dissipating in dazzling displays of light. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. The shields were holding. Thrak's face reappeared on screen, his composure slipping. "Impossible! How are you—" He cut himself off, barking orders to his crew in the Wadi language. The Wadi ship began a series of aggressive maneuvers, unleashing a relentless barrage against the horizon. Matthew watched the readouts closely, noticing a pattern in the enemy ship's movements. "Commander," he said urgently, "their maneuvers are putting enormous strain on their propulsion systems. If we can exploit that weakness—" Reeves nodded, understanding immediately. "What do you need?" "Access to your sensor array. I think we can repurpose it to emit a targeted electromagnetic pulse." "Do it," Reeves ordered. Matthew and O'Brien set to work once more, reconfiguring the sensor systems with lightning speed. As they made the final adjustments, the ship rocked from another Wadi assault. "Shields at 30% and falling," the tactical officer reported. "Now or never," Matthew muttered, activating the modified sensor array. A wave of invisible energy pulsed out from the horizon, engulfing the Wadi vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, the enemy ship's engines flickered and died. "Direct hit," O'Brien exclaimed. "Their propulsion systems are offline." Reeves wasted no time. "Open a channel. When Thrak's furious face appeared, Reeves spoke with calm authority. "General, as you can see, the tables have turned. I propose a ceasefire. We'll assist with your repairs in exchange for peaceful negotiations." Thrak's scales rippled with terrifying rage, but his eyes darted to something off-screen, likely damage reports from his crew. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly. "Agreed, but this isn't over, human." As repair teams from both ships began their work, Matthew found himself elbow-deep in Wadi technology. He marveled at their advanced propulsion systems, his mind racing with the possibilities for human space travel. Orin moved between the two crews, her unique position as both former slave and current ally allowing her to bridge the communication gap. Despite the lingering tension, a tentative cooperation began to form. On the Horizon's bridge, Reeves and Thrak engaged in tense but productive dialogue. They agreed to a temporary truce and began arrangements for a formal diplomatic meeting on neutral ground. Amid this fragile peace, a new transmission came through. "Commander Reeves," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth. It's Ambassador Krell." Reeves straightened his uniform. "Put him through." Ambassador Krell's weathered face appeared on screen, his expression grave. "Commander, I've been briefed on the situation. I'm en route to your position via diplomatic shuttle. In the meantime, I have a message for General Thrak." Thrak leaned into view, his eyes narrowing. Krell continued, "The human government is prepared to consider granting asylum to the individual known as Orin, in exchange for Wadi concessions on your expansionist policies." A low hiss escaped Thrak's lips, but before he could respond, alarms blared across both ships. "Multiple contacts," the Horizon's tactical officer shouted. "A fleet of ships just dropped out of FTL. Configuration matches known vessels of the Zax Vorn Syndicate." Matthew's blood ran cold. He knew Vorn's reputation, a ruthless criminal kingpin who would exploit any situation for profit. Reeves and Thrak exchanged glances, years of mistrust warring with the immediate threat before them. "It seems," Reeves said slowly, "that we have a common enemy." Thrak's scaled hand clenched into a fist. "So it would appear, human." As Vorn's fleet approached, Matthew's mind raced. He turned to Reeves and Thrak, a daring plan forming. "I have an idea," he began, "but it will require something unprecedented, a full integration of human and Wadi defense systems." All eyes turned to Matthew as he outlined his proposal. The fate of both ships, and perhaps the future of human-Wadi relations, hung in the balance as Vorn's forces drew ever closer. Nearer. "Let's hear it," Reeves said, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. Matthew quickly outlined his plan, his words tumbling out in a rush. "We need to combine our technologies. The Wadi shield modulation is superior to ours, but our weapons targeting systems are more precise. If we can integrate them, we'll have a defense that Vorn's fleet won't be able to penetrate." Thrak's eyes narrowed. "You propose giving humans access to our shield technology?" "And we'd be sharing our weapon systems with you," Matthew countered. "It's the only way we stand a chance against those numbers." Reeves and Thrak exchanged a long look, decades of distrust warring with the imminent threat. Finally, Thrak gave a curt nod. "Do it." The next minutes were a blur of activity. Matthew and Orin raced between the two ships, coordinating with both human and Wadi engineers. Streams of data flowed between the vessels as they worked to merge incompatible systems. "Incoming!" The tactical officer's shout cut through the controlled chaos on the Horizon's bridge. A barrage of energy weapons fire from Vorn's lead ship streaked toward them. The newly integrated shields flared to life, a shimmering barrier of combined human and Wadi technology. The attack dissipated harmlessly against it. A cheer went up from both crews. Reeves allowed himself a small smile before turning to Thrak. "General, I suggest you take charge of our counteroffensive. Your people know Vorn's tactics better than we do." Thrak nodded, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Agreed. You handle defense, human. I'll show this criminal scum the might of a true Wadi warrior." As the battle raged, Matthew found himself shoulder to shoulder with Chief Engineer O'Brien, rerouting power and fine-tuning their hybrid systems. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Hull breach on deck 5, O'Brien shouted. "Boarders!" Matthew's blood ran cold. He grabbed a nearby hand phaser, memories of the slave market flashing through his mind. "I'm going to help repel them," he told O'Brien. "Are you mad?" the engineer exclaimed. "You're not security." But Matthew was already sprinting toward the turbolift. He emerged on deck 5 to find chaos. Security Chief Marcus Grant and his team were engaged in a firefight with Vorn's boarding party. Acrid smoke filled the air, and the stench of ozone from energy weapons hung heavy. Matthew took cover behind a fallen bulkhead, his heart pounding. He watched Grant take down 2 of Vorn's men with precise shots, but more kept coming. Taking a deep breath, Matthew leaned out and fired, his shot catching a boarder in the shoulder. Grant's eyes widened in surprise, but he gave Matthew a quick nod. "Cover the left flank," he ordered. For what felt like hours, they fought a running battle through the horizon's corridors. Matthew's arms ached from the constant recoil of his weapon, but adrenaline kept him going. His human strength and commitment proved crucial in close-quarter combat when their energy weapons were too risky to use. Meanwhile, in engineering, Oren worked feverishly alongside O'Brien. Her knowledge of Wadi systems allowed her to anticipate power fluctuations and reroute energy to critical areas before they failed. "We've got a plasma leak in Junction 7 Alpha," O'Brien shouted over the din of battle. Oren's fingers flew over the controls. "Rerouting power through secondary conduits," she replied. "That should hold it." O'Brien grinned at her. "You're a natural, lass. Ever considered a career in Starfleet?" On the bridge, Reeves and Thrak coordinated their efforts with the efficiency that belied their years of animosity. Thrak's tactical genius, combined with Reeves's steady command, kept them one step ahead of Vorn's assaults. "Commander," the communications officer called out. "Incoming transmission from Earth. It's Ambassador Krell." Krell's face appeared on screen, his expression a mix of concern and excitement. "Commander Reeves, I've just received authorization from United Earth. We're prepared to negotiate a formal alliance with the Wadi Empire against Vorn's syndicate." Thrak's scales rippled in surprise. "An alliance with humans?" Before anyone could respond, Matthew's voice came over the comm. "Commander, we've identified a weakness in Vorn's flagship. Their power distribution mirrors a flaw I discovered in older Wadi designs." Reeves leaned forward. "Can we exploit it?" "Affirmative," Matthew replied. "But we'll need General Thrak's help. If he can execute a precision strike on these coordinates, we can overload their main power conduits." Thrak studied the data Matthew transmitted, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Clever, human. Very clever." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target those exact points. Full power to forward batteries." The Wadi warship maneuvered into position, its weapons charging. With pinpoint accuracy, they struck Vorn's flagship at its most vulnerable spots. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cascading explosions rippled across the massive vessel. "Direct hit," Thrak roared. "Their primary systems are failing." Reeves seized the moment. "All ships, concentrate fire on the remaining enemy vessels. Let's end this." The combined human Wadi force surged forward, their coordinated attack cutting through Vorn's disorganized fleet. One by one, the Syndicate's ships were disabled or destroyed. Those that could still fly turned tail and fled. As the last enemy signatures disappeared from their sensors, a different alert sounded. "Commander," the tactical officer reported, "we're detecting a small craft leaving Vorn's flagship. It's an escape pod." Reeves and Thrak exchanged a look. "Shall we, General?" Reeves asked. Thrak nodded. "By all means, Commander. Let's reel in our prize catch." As tractor beams locked onto Vorn's escape pod, Matthew and Oren made their way to the bridge. They arrived just in time to see the notorious crime lord being led away in restraints, his face a mask of impotent rage. Ambassador Krell's voice cut through the post-battle tension. "Commander Reeves, General Thrak, I believe we have much to discuss. The events of today have opened up unprecedented opportunities for cooperation between our peoples." As Krell outlined his proposal for a joint human-Wadi task force, Matthew felt Oren's hand slip into his. He squeezed it gently, marveling at how their accidental marriage had set in motion a chain of events that might reshape the galaxy. Reeves turned to them, a rare smile on his face. "It seems your unique situation has caught the attention of Earth's government, Mr. Reed. They're offering you an official position as a technological liaison to the Wadi Empire." Matthew's eyes widened. "Sir?" "And Ms. Oren," Reeves continued, "you've been granted political asylum on Earth. There's a position waiting for you as a cultural advisor to help bridge the gap between our species." Oren's grip on Matthew's hand tightened, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Commander." As the implications of these offers sank in, alarms once again blared across the bridge. "Multiple contacts," the tactical officer shouted. "More ships dropping out of FTL." Matthew and Oren exchanged worried glances. Their work, it seemed, was far from finished. Over. The bridge crew tensed, preparing for another onslaught. But as the new vessels materialized on their scanners, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. "It's the Earth Relief Fleet," Reeves announced, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Looks like Ambassador Krell's message got through." As the human ships took up defensive positions around the horizon and Thrak's vessel, Matthew felt a moment of hope. Perhaps now they could catch their breath and begin to process the monumental changes of the past few hours. But fate had other plans. A priority communication from Earth flashed across the main view screen. Admiral Chen's face appeared, her expression grave. "Commander Reeves, we have a serious situation developing in Wadi space. High Commander Zorn has staged a coup against the current Wadi leadership. He seized control of key military installations and declared the alliance void." Thrak's scales rippled with shock. "Impossible," he growled. "Zorn wouldn't dare." Admiral Chen continued, "The Horizon is being tasked with intervention. You must stabilize the Wadi political situation and protect the alliance at all costs." Reeves straightened, his teeth clenched. "Understood, Admiral. We'll depart immediately." As the transmission ended, the bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Reeves turned to Thrak. "General, we'll need your expertise on this mission. Will you join us?" Thrak nodded grimly. "My ship is in no condition for battle. I'll transfer my command staff to the Horizon." Within the hour, the Horizon was racing towards Wadi space, leaving the Earth fleet to deal with the aftermath of Vorn's attack. Matthew found himself in engineering, working alongside Chief O'Brien to fine-tune the hybrid shield technology they'd cobbled together during the battle. "How are those power fluctuations, lad?" O'Brien called out from beneath a console. Matthew checked the readouts. "Stabilizing, but we're still seeing spikes in the lower frequencies. I think we need to—" A violent shudder ran through the ship, cutting off Matthew's words. Red alert klaxons blared as Commander Reeves's voice came over the comm system. "All hands, brace for impact. We've encountered a Wadi blockade." Matthew and O'Brien scrambled to reinforce the shields as energy weapons fire pounded the horizon. On the bridge, Reeves and Thrak coordinated their response, targeting weak points in the blockade formation. "Their shields are adapting," Thrak growled. "They must have obtained data on our hybrid technology." Reeves nodded grimly. "Helm, execute evasive pattern Delta. We need to break through their line." The Horizon dove and weaved through the barrage, its hybrid shields flickering under the strain. Matthew's fingers flew over his console, rerouting power and compensating for damage faster than he'd ever worked before. A particularly vicious hit rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from overloaded systems. "Hull breach on Deck 7, an ensign shouted. "Seal it off," Reeves ordered. "Divert emergency power to structural integrity." With a final burst from its impulse engines, the Horizon broke through the blockade. But the ship had taken a beating. As they limped towards Vados Prime, a Wadi colony world, Reeves made a difficult decision. "We can't maintain orbit in this condition," he announced. "Prepare for emergency landing procedures." The descent through Vados Prime's atmosphere was harrowing. Matthew and O'Brien fought to keep the failing engines online as the planet's surface rushed up to meet them. With a bone-jarring impact, the Horizon skidded across a barren plain before coming to rest on the outskirts of a Wadi city. As the dust settled, Reeves's voice came over the comm once more. "Damage report. All stations." The news wasn't good. The horizon was grounded for the foreseeable future, and the colony world around them was in chaos. Reports flooded in of fighting in the streets as Zorn's supporters clashed with those loyal to the old government. Reeves called an emergency meeting in the conference room. Matthew found himself seated alongside Oren, surrounded by senior staff and Thrax advisors. "We need to locate and extract Wadi moderates who support the Alliance," Reeves explained, outlining their mission. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Oren, I want you to lead a team on the ground. Your unique combination of skills will be crucial for this operation." Matthew nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. He glanced at Oren, who squeezed his hand reassuringly under the table. As the meeting concluded, Matthew and Oren headed to the armory to gear up. Security Chief Grant outfitted them with phasers, and communicators adapted to penetrate the interference caused by the ongoing conflict. "Remember your training," Grant advised as he handed Matthew a phaser, "and watch each other's backs out there." Stepping out onto the surface of Vados Prime, Matthew was struck by the alien landscape. Twin suns beat down on sprawling Wadi architecture, its elegant spires now marred by weapons fire and smoke. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of battle. Oren took point, her intimate knowledge of Wadi urban layout guiding them through back alleys and hidden passages. Matthew marveled at her grace under pressure, her past as a slave now transformed into a strength that could save both their peoples. As they moved deeper into the city, the signs of conflict grew more pronounced. Burned-out vehicles blocked streets, and frightened Wadi civilians peeked out from barricaded homes. Matthew's team provided what aid they could, but they had to keep moving. Their first objective was the home of Councillor Thala, a key figure in the pro-alliance government. As they approached her residence, the sound of weapons fire intensified. Matthew signaled for the team to take cover as a squad of Zorn's troops marched into view, dragging a struggling figure between them. "It's Thala," Oren whispered, her eyes wide. "They're taking her to a transport." Matthew's mind raced, knowing they had only moments to act. He looked around, noting the Wadi power conduits running along the buildings. An idea formed, born from his understanding of both human and Wadi technology. "Cover me," he told Oren, then darted to a nearby access panel. His fingers flew over the alien controls, rerouting power in a way the Wadi engineers had never intended. With a crackle of energy, the streetlights overloaded, plunging the area into darkness. In the confusion, Matthew's team struck. Stun blasts from their phasers dropped Zorn's soldiers before they could react. Oren rushed to Thala's side, helping the shaken counselor to her feet. "Thank you," Thala gasped, leaning heavily on Oren. "But we must hurry. Zorn's forces are everywhere, and they're jamming all off-world communications." As if to emphasize her point, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. Matthew keyed his communicator, wincing at the burst of static. "Horizon, this is Reed. We've secured Councillor Thala, but we need immediate extraction. Can you lock onto our signals?" The response was faint and broken. "Interference. Unable to transport. Make for coordinates." Matthew looked at his team, drive in his eyes. "Looks like we're on our own for now. Let's move." As they melted back into the shadows of the war-torn city, Matthew couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of their struggles. The fate of two civilizations rested on their shoulders, and the true test of the human-Wadi alliance was yet to come. Matthew and his team moved swiftly through the chaotic streets of the Wadi city, Councillor Thala supported between Oren and a security officer. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance as they made their way to the coordinates provided by the Horizon's broken transmission. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Zorn's troops. Without hesitation, Matthew's team dropped into defensive positions, phasers at the ready. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense, energy blasts scorching the ornate Wadi architecture around them. "This way!" Oren called out, gesturing toward a narrow alleyway. They ducked into the passage just as a volley of enemy fire erupted behind them. Emerging on the other side, they found themselves in a small courtyard. To their relief, a Horizon shuttle was touching down, its engines humming softly. The team quickly boarded, and within moments they were airborne, streaking towards the grounded starship. Back aboard the Horizon, Commander Reeves wasted no time. Mr. Reed, Ms. Oren, report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. When they arrived, the view screen displayed a tactical map of Wadi space. Reeves gestured to the display. We've reconfigured the horizon as a mobile command center. Our first target is Zorn's primary communications hub on Nebula 9. Matthew's eyes widened. Nebula 9? That's one of the most heavily fortified Wadi colonies. Reeves nodded grimly. Which is precisely why Zorn chose it for his command center. We'll need every advantage we can get. Over the next few hours, Matthew and Oren worked tirelessly with the engineering team to integrate their hybrid shield technology into the Horizon systems. The modifications would be crucial for the upcoming battle. As they approached Nebula 9, the ship dropped out of warp into a sea of hostile vessels. Zorn's defense fleet filled the view screen, a formidable array of Wadi warships. Evasive maneuvers, Reeves barked. Tactical, target their lead ships. Let's see what our new shields can do. The Horizon plunged into the fray, its hybrid shields absorbing enemy fire with remarkable efficiency. Matthew watched from his station as Wadi loyalist ships, coordinated by Thrak, executed a brilliant flanking maneuver. The battle raged for what felt like hours. Ships on both sides erupted into fireballs, the vacuum of space momentarily illuminated by their destruction. Despite the chaos, the Horizon's superior technology began to turn the tide. We've breached their defensive line, the tactical officer announced. Reeves leaned forward in his chair. Take us into orbit, prepare away teams for ground assault. As the Horizon entered Nebula 9's orbit, Matthew found himself leading a strike team to infiltrate the communications hub. Security Chief Marcus Grant stood beside him in the transporter room, along with a mix of human and Wadi special forces. Remember, Matthew addressed the team, we're using a combination of human stealth tech and Wadi phase-shifting devices. Stay close, stay quiet, and watch each other's backs. They materialized on the planet's surface, the massive communications hub looming before them. Using their advanced technology, they bypassed the external defenses with relative ease, but inside they encountered fierce resistance from Zorn's elite guards. The team fought their way through winding corridors, the air thick with energy discharges and the acrid smell of fried circuitry. Matthew's mind raced, analyzing the complex Wadi systems around them. As they approached the central control room, Matthew noticed something odd about the jamming signals. This technology, it's far beyond standard Wadi capabilities, he muttered. Chief Grant overheard him. What are you thinking, Reed? I'm not sure, but I have a bad feeling about this. We need to secure a sample of their jamming device. They breached the control room in a hail of phaser fire. As the rest of the team secured the perimeter, Matthew made his way to the central console. His fingers flew over the alien controls, bypassing security protocols with a mix of human ingenuity and his growing understanding of Wadi tech. Got it, he said, pocketing a small device. This should give us some answers. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon, Oren worked alongside Counselor Thala to coordinate with Wadi civilians on Nebula 9. They used the ship's enhanced communication systems to broadcast messages exposing Zorn's alliance with criminal elements. People of Nebula 9, Thala's voice rang out across the airwaves. High Commander Zorn has betrayed not only our alliance with humanity, but the very principles of Wadi society. He conspires with galactic criminals, seeking to plunge us into a war that will devastate both our peoples. The effect was immediate. Reports flooded in of unrest spreading across the planet, with mass defections from Zorn's forces. Back in the control room, Matthew's team had nearly secured the facility when a towering Wadi warrior burst through the doors. Colonel Vex, Zorn's second-in-command, stood before them, his scales filled with rage. You think you can turn my people against us? Vex snarled. I'll crush you myself, human. Matthew barely had time to react before Vex was upon him. The Wadi's superior strength sent him flying across the room, crashing into a bank of computers. But Matthew had fought alongside Wadi before, and he knew their weaknesses. Rolling to his feet, Matthew dodged Vex's next attack, using the Wadi's momentum against him. They grappled across the control room, a furious exchange of blows that left both combatants battered and breathing heavily. In a final, desperate move, Matthew feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping Vex's legs out from under him. The Wadi colonel crashed to the ground, and Matthew was on him in an instant, applying a nerve pinch Orin had taught him. Vex's eyes rolled back, and he fell unconscious. "Control room secure," Matthew panted into his communicator. With the hub under their control, Matthew worked alongside Chief Engineer O'Brien to disable the jamming technology. As the interference cleared, communications across Wadi space were restored. "Horizon to Earth Fleet," Reeves's voice rang out clear and strong. "We've secured the communications hub on Nebula 9, requesting immediate support to contain the rebellion." But their victory was short-lived. As Matthew and O'Brien dug deeper into the hub's systems, they uncovered disturbing information. "Commander," Matthew called out, his voice tense, "you need to see this." The data laid bare before them painted a chilling picture. Vorn had acquired a cache of ancient Wadi superweapons, long thought to be nothing more than myths, weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. "This can't be right," O'Brien muttered, his face pale. But it was Orin who provided the final piece of the puzzle. Her voice shook as she explained the historical context of these weapons, outlawed centuries ago due to their horrific destructive capability. "If Vorn uses these weapons against Earth," she said, her eyes meeting Matthew's, "it will mean the end of everything we've worked for. Millions will die, and our peoples will be plunged into a war that could destroy both civilizations." Commander Reeves's lips pursed as he processed this information. "Plot a course for the coordinates of that weapons cache," he ordered. "We need to stop Vorn before he can acquire those superweapons." As the Horizon prepared to jump to hyperspace, Matthew felt the weight of their mission settle over him. He looked around the bridge, seeing the grit in the eyes of both human and Wadi crew members. They had come so far, overcome so much. Now the fate of both their peoples rested in their hands. The ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace, streaking towards a confrontation that would determine the future of human-Wadi relations. Matthew exchanged a glance with Orin, drawing strength from her presence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Horizon burst out of hyperspace, the stars streaking back into pinpoints as the ship decelerated. Before them loomed a massive structure, its ancient architecture a testament to the technological prowess of the Wadi ancestors. The space station hung suspended against the backdrop of a dying star, its feeble red light casting an eerie glow on the station's weathered surface. "Multiple Wadi signatures detected," reported the tactical officer. "Confirmed as vessels loyal to Vorn. They're already docked with the station." Commander Reeves leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. "Maintain our distance. We can't risk alerting them to our presence just yet." Matthew and Chief Engineer O'Brien hunched over a console, their fingers flying across the controls as they analyzed the station's defenses. Data scrolled across the screen, revealing layer upon layer of sophisticated security measures. "This energy field," Matthew muttered, pointing to a pulsing blue barrier surrounding the station. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Our transporters can't penetrate it, and even our shuttles would be detected and vaporized instantly." O'Brien nodded grimly. "The only way in is through that main docking bay, but it's crawling with Zorn's forces." Matthew's mind raced, piecing together fragments of information. His eyes lit up as an idea formed. "What if we didn't use a shuttle?" he asked, turning to Reeves. "Commander, I think I have a plan." Minutes later, Matthew stood before the assembled team in the launch bay, gesturing to a modified escape pod. Its sleek surface shimmered with an otherworldly quality, the result of integrated Wadi cloaking technology. "This pod will get us past their defenses," Matthew explained. "Once inside, we split into two teams. Orin and I will head for the central control room to disable the station's defenses. Chief Grant, you'll lead the search for the superweapon cache with our Wadi allies." Orin stepped forward, her scales gleaming under the bay lights. "I've programmed the cloaking device with fluctuating harmonics based on Wadi security protocols. It should keep us undetected long enough to dock." As the team boarded the pod, Matthew caught Orin's eye. A moment of understanding passed between them. Unspoken but palpable. The pod's hatch sealed with a hiss. and they launched into the void. The journey to the station was tense, each second stretching into an eternity as they held their breath, praying the cloaking would hold. As they approached the docking bay, Matthew's hands tightened on the controls, guiding the pod through a narrow gap between two of Zorn's ships. With a soft thud, they touched down inside the station. The team disembarked swiftly, weapons at the ready. Matthew nodded to Grant, and the group split up, each heading towards their objectives. Matthew and Oren made their way through dimly lit corridors, the ancient metal groaning beneath their feet. They passed chambers filled with artifacts that spoke of the Wadi's forgotten golden age, crystalline computers pulsing with otherworldly energy, and murals depicting cosmic events beyond human comprehension. "These weapons," Oren whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear, "they're not just destructive. They're reality-altering. In the wrong hands, they could unravel the very fabric of space-time." As they rounded a corner, voices echoed from an adjoining passage. Matthew pulled Oren into a shadowy alcove, their bodies pressed close as a patrol of Zorn's soldiers marched past. He could feel the rapid beat of Oren's heart, her scales cool against his skin. Once the danger had passed, they continued their journey, relying on Oren's knowledge of Wadi protocols to bypass security checkpoints. Matthew marveled at her ability to interpret the complex symbols and energy patterns that served as locks. Finally, they reached the central control room. Banks of holographic displays filled the air, depicting the station's systems in intricate detail. Matthew's fingers danced across the controls, his human intuition finding patterns in the alien technology. "I've almost got it," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. "Just need to... wait." His face fell as he studied the readouts. "Oren, we have a problem. The defense systems can only be shut down from two separate nodes, simultaneously." Oren's eyes met his, understanding and purpose mirrored in their depth. "We'll have to split up," she said. With a nod, Matthew handed her a communicator. "Be careful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As they worked to disable the defenses from their separate locations, their voices crackled over the comms, a lifeline in the vast alien structure. "You know, Oren," Matthew said, grunting as he wrestled with a stubborn control panel, "when this is over, I was thinking we could take that trip to the Andromeda colony you mentioned." Oren's laugh, tinged with tension, came through the speaker. "I'd like that, Matthew, though I doubt it will be as exciting as this." Their banter was cut short by the sound of a struggle on Oren's end. Matthew's blood ran cold as he heard a deep, menacing voice. High Commander Zorn himself. "Oren!" Matthew shouted into the comm, abandoning his task and sprinting towards her location. His heart pounded in his ears as he raced through the station's winding corridors. He burst into the control room to find Oren locked in combat with Zorn, her slender form darting around the larger Wadi's powerful strikes. Without hesitation, Matthew hurled himself at Zorn, tackling the commander with all his strength. The impact sent them crashing into a bank of controls, sparks flying as ancient circuitry shorted out. Matthew and Zorn grappled, human grit against Wadi might. Out of the corner of his eye, Matthew saw Oren lunge for the defense controls. With a final, desperate heave, Matthew managed to pin Zorn long enough for Oren to complete the shutdown sequence. The station shuddered as its defenses powered down, leaving it vulnerable to the waiting Earth fleet. "Horizon, this is Reed," Matthew panted into his communicator. "The station's defenses are down. You're clear to engage." Through the station's viewports, they watched as the Horizon and its allies swooped in, engaging Zorn's forces in a spectacular firefight. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, explosions blossoming in silent bursts of light and debris. But their victory was short-lived. Taking advantage of their distraction, Zorn broke free, delivering a powerful blow that sent Matthew reeling. The High Commander sprinted from the room, his retreat covered by the chaos of the space battle outside. As Matthew struggled to his feet, his communicator crackled to life. It was Grant, his voice urgent. "Reed, we've secured the weapon cache, but one's missing. We think Zorn has it." Matthew's eyes met Oren's, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they took off in pursuit of Zorn, racing through the corridors of the ancient station. As they ran, Matthew's mind whirled with the implications. Zorn, in possession of a weapon capable of unraveling reality itself, was now cornered and desperate. The fate of not just their mission, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. They rounded a corner, catching a glimpse of Zorn's retreating form as he headed towards the docking bay where his personal ship waited. Matthew pushed himself harder, his muscles burning with exertion. Beside him, Orin matched his pace, her wadi agility allowing her to navigate the twisting passages with ease. The station shook around them, the battle outside intensifying. Klaxons blared, and emergency lights bathed the corridors in a pulsing red glow. Through it all, Matthew and Orin ran, driven by the knowledge that if Zorn escaped with that weapon, all their efforts would be for naught. As they closed in on the docking bay, Matthew's hand found Orin's, squeezing it briefly. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, human and wadi united against a threat that endangered them all. Matthew and Orin burst into the hangar bay, their ragged breaths echoing off the ancient metal walls. The cavernous space stretched before them, filled with shadows and the ghostly outlines of long-abandoned wadi vessels. At the far end, a sleek ship stood out from the rest, Zorn's personal stealth cruiser. "There!" Orin hissed, her keen eyes spotting movement near the ship. Before they could advance, a barrage of energy blasts erupted from the darkness. Matthew dove behind a rusted piece of machinery, feeling the heat of plasma bolts sizzling past his head. Orin took cover behind a nearby pillar, her scales blending seamlessly with the metallic surface. "Zorn's guards!" Matthew called out, risking a glance around his cover. He counted at least 6 heavily armed wadi soldiers advancing on their position. Orin nodded, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the situation. "They're using a standard wadi assault formation. If we time it right, we can use their predictable movements against them." Matthew grinned despite the dire circumstances. "Lead the way, partner." As one, they emerged from cover. Matthew's human reflexes allowed him to fire off quick, precise shots with his energy pistol, while Orin's intimate knowledge of wadi tactics guided their movements. They weaved through the hangar, using the ancient machinery as cover, always staying one step ahead of their attackers. A stray bolt struck dangerously close to Orin, and Matthew felt his heart leap into his throat. He laid down suppressing fire, allowing her to dart to a safer position. Their eyes met briefly across the chaotic space, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Through the firefight, Matthew caught glimpses of Zorn making his way towards his ship. In the wadi commander's arms was a large cylindrical object that pulsed with an otherworldly energy, the superweapon. "He's getting away!" Matthew shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. Without hesitation, Matthew launched himself from behind cover. He sprinted across the open hangar floor, plasma bolts scorching the ground at his heels. Orin's voice rang out behind him, calling his name, but he couldn't stop now. Zorn turned at the sound of approaching footsteps, his eyes widening in surprise as Matthew barreled towards him. The human slammed into the wadi commander with all his might, just as Zorn reached the entrance ramp of his ship. The impact sent them both sprawling, the superweapon flying from Zorn's grasp. It clattered across the hangar floor, its ominous glow casting eerie shadows. "Orin!" Matthew called out, grappling with Zorn on the ship's ramp. "The weapon!" Orin broke from cover, her lithe form darting across the hangar. One of Zorn's guards took aim, his weapon charging with lethal intent. Time seemed to slow as Matthew watched, helpless to intervene. Suddenly, a blur of motion caught his eye. A wadi soldier, one of their allies, leapt into the line of fire. The loyalist took the full brunt of the blast meant for Orin, his body crumpling to the ground. Orin faltered for a moment, her eyes wide with shock at the wadi's sacrifice. But she pushed on, scooping up the superweapon and retreating to a defensible position. On the ship's ramp, Matthew and Zorn continued their brutal struggle. Zorn's wadi physiology gave him a significant strength advantage, his powerful blows threatening to overwhelm Matthew. But the human's years of combat experience aboard the Horizon had honed his skills to a razor's edge. Matthew rolled with Zorn's strikes, using the wadi's momentum against him. He landed quick, precise blows to vulnerable points, exploiting weaknesses in wadi anatomy that Oren had once pointed out during quieter moments. The fight was vicious, neither combatant willing to give ground. Matthew tasted blood in his mouth, felt the sting of a dozen small injuries. But he couldn't falter, not with so much at stake. "Matthew!" Oren's voice cut through the chaos. "The weapon is armed! It's counting down!" A cold dread settled in Matthew's stomach. He redoubled his efforts, calling upon reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. In a flurry of strikes, he managed to knock Zorn off balance. Seizing the moment, Matthew planted his foot squarely in Zorn's chest, sending the Wadi commander stumbling back into his ship. Before Zorn could recover, Matthew thumped his hand into the ramp controls. The entrance sealed shut with a hiss of hydraulics, trapping Zorn inside. Matthew wasted no time, sprinting towards Oren's position. "How long?" he gasped, skidding to a halt beside her. Oren's fingers danced over the weapon's surface, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Not long enough to fully disarm it, but I have an idea." She gestured to a nearby containment unit, its reinforced structure designed to withstand the rigors of space. "Help me get it inside. We can jettison it into space." Together they maneuvered the pulsing weapon into the container. Matthew's hands shook as he sealed the unit, acutely aware of each precious second ticking away. "The force field controls," Oren said, pointing to a nearby console. "We need to activate the emergency protocols." Matthew nodded, sprinting to the panel. His fingers flew across the alien interface, guided by countless hours of training with Oren. The hangar shimmered as the force field sprang to life. "Now!" Oren shouted. Matthew slammed his hand down on the jettison controls. The containment unit shot out into space, propelled by ancient but powerful Wadi technology. They watched through the force field as the unit tumbled away from the station. Seconds later, a blinding flash lit up the void. The shockwave hit moments after, rocking the station and sending Matthew and Oren sprawling. As the light faded, Matthew saw the destruction left in the wake of the explosion. Several ships from the ongoing battle had been caught in the blast, including Zorn's vessel. Of the Wadi commander's ship, there was no sign. The station groaned ominously around them, the superweapon's detonation proving too much for the already damaged structure. "We need to go," Oren said, helping Matthew to his feet. "This whole place is coming apart." They raced through the collapsing corridors, the station's death throes echoing all around them. Emergency lighting bathed everything in a hellish red glow, and the air grew thin as life support systems failed. Just when Matthew thought his burning lungs would give out, they reached the escape pod bay. To his relief, he saw Security Chief Grant and the remnants of his team already there. "Grant," Matthew called out, "tell me you got what we came for." The security chief nodded grimly, holding up a data core. "Everything we need on the remaining superweapons. But this is the last functional pod. We need to go now." They piled into the cramped escape pod, the door sealing behind them with a finality that sent shivers down Matthew's spine. Through the view screen, he watched as the ancient Wadi station began to tear itself apart. "Hold on," Matthew said, taking the pilot's seat. "This is going to be rough." He fired the pod's engines, launching them into the chaos of the ongoing space battle. Debris and weapons fire filled the void around them, a deadly obstacle course that required all of Matthew's piloting skills to navigate. Beside him, Oren worked furiously to boost the pod's shields, her intimate knowledge of Wadi technology proving invaluable. "The Horizon is holding position near the edge of the battle," she reported. "If we can reach them—" Matthew nodded, his heart made. He weaved the pod through the battlefield, acutely aware of how fragile their craft was compared to the warships exchanging fire around them. A massive explosion lit up their view screen, the ancient Wadi station's final demise. The shockwave buffeted their pod, sending them tumbling through space. "Matthew!" Oren cried out, her clawed hand gripping his arm. He fought with the controls, using every trick he'd learned in his years as a pilot. Slowly, agonizingly, the pod stabilized. And there, growing larger in their view screen, was the welcoming sight of the Horizon. "Horizon, this is Reed," Matthew called out over the comms. "Requesting immediate recovery. We have vital intelligence and wounded aboard." Commander Reeves's voice crackled through the speakers. "Ceasefire is in effect. Bring her home, Matthew. As they approached the horizon's hangar bay, Matthew allowed himself a moment to breathe. He looked at Oren, saw the mixture of relief and apprehension in her eyes. They had won this battle, but both knew that greater challenges lay ahead. The future of human-Wadi relations hung in the balance, but as Matthew guided the pod to a gentle landing aboard the horizon, he felt a flicker of hope. If a human and a Wadi could forge the bond that he and Oren shared, perhaps there was hope for their peoples, after all. The pod's door opened with a hiss, and Matthew stepped out onto the deck of the horizon. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together. Together. The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with a mixture of relief and apprehension. As the horizon approached the familiar blue planet, Matthew stood at the viewport, his hand resting on the cool surface. Oren joined him, her scaled fingers intertwining with his. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of humanity's homeworld. Matthew nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I never thought I'd see it again, especially not like this." As they entered Earth's orbit, Matthew felt the weight of their actions settle upon his shoulders. They had prevented a war, but at what cost? The consequences of their choices loomed large as the horizon began its docking procedures. The ship shuddered as it connected with the orbital station. Matthew took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Ready?" he asked Oren. She met his gaze, her alien features set with perseverance. "Always." They disembarked amid a flurry of activity. News of their arrival had spread quickly, and a crowd of officials, media, and curious onlookers had gathered to witness their return. Flashbulbs popped and questions were shouted, but Matthew and Oren remained focused, following their security escort to a waiting shuttle. As they descended to the surface, Matthew caught glimpses of the world below. Sprawling cities glittered in the sunlight, while vast swaths of restored wilderness stretched between them. It was a far cry from the polluted, overcrowded Earth of centuries past. Their shuttle touched down outside a massive building complex, the headquarters of the United Earth government. Matthew and Oren were immediately ushered inside, led through a maze of corridors to a large conference room. Inside, they found an assembly of Earth's highest-ranking officials, along with a delegation of Wadi representatives. The tension in the room was palpable, centuries of mistrust and recent conflict hanging heavy in the air. A stern-faced woman at the head of the table stood as they entered. "Commander Reed, Liaison Oren, welcome back to Earth. I'm President Chen. We have much to discuss." The debriefing lasted for hours. Matthew and Oren recounted their experiences in painstaking detail, from the accidental marriage on Novotera to the final confrontation aboard the ancient Wadi station. They presented the data recovered from the station, revealing the true extent of the superweapon threat. As they spoke, Matthew noticed a gradual shift in the room. The initial skepticism and hostility began to give way to understanding and even cautious optimism. When they finished their account, a thoughtful silence fell over the assembly. President Chen leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "What you've presented here today changes everything. It's clear that neither humans nor Wadi can afford to continue on our current path." A tall, regal Wadi stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Krelnax. On behalf of the remaining Wadi leadership, I concur with President Chen. We must find a new way forward." What followed was a series of intense negotiations. Matthew and Oren found themselves at the center of it all, their unique perspective bridging the gap between human and Wadi interests. As the talks progressed, a bold plan began to take shape. Days later, Matthew stood before a joint session of the United Earth Congress and Wadi High Council. The chamber was packed, with billions more watching the broadcast across both human and Wadi space. "Today," Matthew began, his voice steady, "we announced the formation of a permanent joint task force. This organization will address interstellar threats and foster cooperation between our peoples. It is our hope that through shared challenges and triumphs, we can forge a lasting peace." Oren stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "As a symbol of our commitment to this new era of cooperation, leadership of the task force will be shared. Commander Reed will serve as the human commander, while I will act as the Wadi liaison and cultural advisor." The announcement was met with a mix of applause and murmurs. Matthew knew that not everyone would embrace this change immediately, but it was a start. In the months that followed, Matthew and Oren threw themselves into their new roles. They oversaw the establishment of joint scientific projects, working to combine human ingenuity with Wadi bioengineering expertise. Cultural exchange programs flourished under their guidance, with humans and Wadi alike eager to learn about their newfound allies. One of the most challenging aspects was the implementation of combined military exercises. Centuries of viewing each other as enemies couldn't be erased overnight, but slowly, progress was made. Matthew watched with pride as human and Wadi soldiers learned to work together, their unique strengths complementing each other. A year after the fateful battle at the Wadi station, Matthew found himself back where it all began. Novotera, the once lawless outpost, had been transformed. As he walked the streets with Oren at his side, he marveled at the changes. Humans and Wadi moved about their daily lives together, no longer separated by fear or mistrust. The marketplace where he had first encountered Oren now bustled with interspecies commerce and laughter. They paused in the center of the main plaza, a new monument catching their eye. It depicted a human and Wadi hand clasped together, rising from a foundation of intertwined DNA strands. Matthew turned to Oren, struck by a sudden realization. Their accidental marriage, once a source of confusion and conflict, had become something more. It was a symbol of what their peoples could achieve together. In that moment, Matthew made a decision. He knelt before Oren, aware of the curious onlookers gathering around them. "Oren," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "when we first married, it was an accident, a desperate act to save your life. But now I'm asking you of my own free will to renew our vows. Not out of obligation, but because I love you, and because I believe in the future we can build together." Oren's eyes widened, a soft gasp escaping her. For a moment, Matthew's heart raced, uncertainty gripping him. Then a radiant smile spread across her face. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet and into an embrace. "1,000 times, yes." The crowd around them erupted into cheers, humans and Wadi alike celebrating this unexpected moment of joy. As Matthew and Oren basked in their happiness, a Wadi official approached them, his expression urgent. "Commander Reed, Liaison Oren," he said, bowing slightly. "I apologize for the interruption, but we've just received word from Earth. The first joint human-Wadi deep space exploration mission is ready to launch. They're requesting your leadership for this historic venture." Matthew and Oren exchanged a look, years of shared experiences and unspoken communication passing between them in an instant. They turned back to the official, their decision already made. "We accept," they said in unison. Days later, they stood on the bridge of a sleek new vessel, a marvel of combined human and Wadi engineering. The crew, a mix of both species, worked seamlessly around them, preparing for their departure. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Matthew took Oren's hand in his. They gazed out at the star-filled expanse before them, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. The ship surged forward, streaking into the cosmos. As Novotera faded behind them, Matthew knew that their greatest adventure, both as a couple and as bridges between their peoples, was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.